Guys, life is worth living again. Look what I got. Haruki Murakami's new book, The City and Its Uncertain Walls. I'm gonna be reading this tomorrow. I'm so excited. It was supposed to come tomorrow, but it came today. Apparently this is his first novel in the last 6 years, and I read his last release, which was Novelist as a Vocation. It was like one of his type of memoir style book. I read What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, something like that. That's his book about running, but also about like his writing routine. I really love that one. And obviously I read Norwegian Wood. And I'm just thinking, have I read anything else by him? I feel like I'm lacking in the fiction department when it comes to Haruki Murakami. I definitely want to read 1Q84 next year. It's one of my big book challenges for next year. I will be filming a video on the big books that I want to try to read next year. I've read a lot of books this year, and I've read a lot of big books this year, so I'm just so excited to keep on going, but I'm trying to even out my time between writing and reading, so that's something that I'm working on. But what I'm currently reading this week is Intermezzo by Miss Sally Rooney, and I'm really enjoying it. Can I know why I have never read another book with sibling age gap before? Considering that my only sibling is 10 years older than me, I never knew that I needed a book like this. And you know, obviously I relate to the younger sibling, Ivan, not just because he's younger and closer to my age, but mostly because he's also socially awkward. But I also do relate to Peter, because Peter is like not having such a great time, and both of the siblings are dealing in their own way with the passing of their father. So Ivan is the younger one. He's about 22. He is a chess player, like a genius chess player. And then you have his older brother, Peter. He has more money. He is in his like mid 30s, early 30s, so like about 10 something years apart. And he is a lawyer. So yeah, I have been enjoying this a lot. At first I found it really hard to get into. I think it's the audiobook narrator, but also because of the way that Sally Rooney constructs her sentences. It took me a bit of like the first 2 chapters, but then as soon as I got over that hurdle, like I'm just like devouring this, and I have to force myself to like read it slowly because she's one of my favorite authors, and I obviously just want to, you know, not just consume this. I want to take my time reading this. Now that I have another book that I want to really read, I'm going to finish this. I'm trying to read only one fiction book at a time, because before in the past I would have like 10-15 books that I'm reading at once. So now I'm better. For a while this year I was reading one book after the other, but now I like want to read short stories at the same time, a little bit of self-help at the same time, a little bit of nonfiction at the same time. So yeah, I just need to finish this one, and then I'm going to talk about the new Haruki Murakami. Whatever I decide to read this week, I will be discussing, obviously with no spoilers. So yeah, I think I want to bring back the reading vlogs, maybe, or when I feel really excited, or when there's like new releases or something, maybe I'll do that. So now let me go read some Intermezzo, do some writing, and tomorrow, hopefully, if I finish Intermezzo by tomorrow, we can start Haruki Murakami's new book. I finished reading Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I think I finished this like 3 days ago. I really enjoyed it, and it made me realize that I want to read books with more sibling relationships. And yeah, I just really connected with it, especially towards the end. Like I think like the first 2-3 chapters are pretty hard to get through, or like to get adjusted to, and then afterwards you really cannot put it down. I will say that I still love Normal People more than anything. And I think this is like a close second, or it's like a kind of like a tie between Conversations with Friends. It's more similar to Conversations with Friends, I would say. And I still have to read her third book, which is Beautiful World, Where Are You? I think that's the third book. I still have to read that book. I don't know why I've been saving that book for a while now, so maybe I'll read that next year when there's no Sally Rooney release. And then I started the new Haruki Murakami book. It's in my bedroom, so I'm gonna go grab that. I'm only about like 30 pages in, but it's really, really good. Like, I'm really intrigued by the premise, basically. So this is the book. It's The City and Its Uncertain Walls. So basically, it's about a young couple, and the girl that the guy is with, and it's funny because it's using the second person, you would think that would stifle the narration, but it actually is more engaging, I find. The young guy and the young girl, they meet at high school, like a writing competition, and then they become friends and then kind of like lovers. And then she's saying that her real self is in the city with the big walls that is warded off from their life and their city. And honestly, it's very strange, and 5 chapters in, you're kind of disoriented because you don't know how this is going to unravel. So let me just read you the blurb because it might explain it better than I can, but even the blurb I find it a little bit confusing, and I think that's on purpose. We begin with a nameless young couple, a boy and a girl, teenagers in love. One day the girl tells the boy about a mysterious town surrounded by a high wall. In that town, the girl tells him her real self resides, and if the boy could manage to come along, she might not recognize him, but he would find his own place. He could be a dream reader, each night reading old dreams. He isn't sure if he should believe her, but then one day she disappears, and her absence haunts him for the rest of his life. Thus begins a search for his lost love that takes the man into middle age and on a journey between the real world and this other world, a town where unicorns roam, where a gatekeeper determines who can enter and who must remain behind, and where shadows become untethered from themselves. Listening to his own dreams and premonitions, the man leaves his life in Tokyo behind and ventures to a small mountain town where he becomes the head librarian, only to learn the mysterious circumstances surrounding the gentleman who had the job before him. As the seasons pass and the man grows more uncertain about the porous boundaries between these two worlds, he meets a strange young boy who helps him to see what he's been missing all along. A love story, a quest, an ode to books and to the libraries that house them, and a parable for these strange post-pandemic times. The City and Its Uncertain Walls is the story of a town familiar to Haruki Murakami's readers, and a singular and towering achievement by one of modern literature's most important writers. I have not reached that part of the story yet. I'm not gonna spoil anything for this vlog because I know this is a fairly new book. I would just film some updates, just explaining if I really like the book or if it's really resonating with me, because I'm very curious about this one. And yeah, so point of the vlog, do some reading and do some writing. I will film a separate writing video. And just not despair. That's the goal. Not to despair. Everything is fine. Everything is under control. We've survived the hard times of life. We survived the pandemic. We're just gonna relax for a bit. And we're gonna continue doing what we are meant to do on this earth, which is to write and read for a living. That's that. So, another thing, I got these 2 books and I really am excited to read both of them. One book I've been eyeing for, I would say, the last 6 months, and honestly I just couldn't help it because I need to read it at some point anyways for when I go back to writing my Riviera story. So it's this book. It's Once Upon a Time, a World, the dark and sparkling story of the French Riviera by Jonathan Miles. So this is so up my alley. And I can't believe this is like one of the French Riviera books that I have not read yet. There's illustration. This copy was so expensive, but I managed to get it for $30, so I had to get it. And then I also have this book because the movie just came out, and it's Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, and it was actually the Booker Prize for 2022. And I'm just so excited to read this and then watch the movie with Cillian Murphy. And I just know that this is gonna be like life-changing, and it's very short, so I might read this next and then watch the movie because, as you guys know, I love books to movies. I am thinking of doing a movie section on this channel, but I feel like I want to brush up on movie terms, like how do I describe the cinematography better, and I don't know, I just don't know how to talk about movies without talking just about like feelings and thoughts and impression of the storyline. How do I talk about, you know, the color grading and stuff? Or maybe I'm just overthinking it and I'll just, you know, slowly start talking about movies, and as I do my research and as I get more into movies and how they're made, you will see that unravel as well. Let's get to reading. So I just had to help my dad move some wood for a few hours, so I did that. Okay, so here's my update for Haruki Murakami's new book. I am enjoying it. I feel like this is another one of his very interior book where we're exploring the main character's inner world, inner struggle, and his own like imagination, if that makes sense. Basically, you have like this real world and this conjured world where it's like branched off for the rest of the world, and there's like so many rules to be in that world, and to come out of that world it's just impossible, but somehow the main character is going through all of that. I don't want to spoil anything, but just know that it's very fascinating. It's very much in line with Haruki Murakami's writing style and the way that he writes his characters and the world. There's a lot of magical realism on the page, and we don't really know the character, like he is unnamed, but we still feel very close to the character and to his struggles with loneliness. That's another thing, another very on-brand Haruki Murakami theme, loneliness and being isolated and feeling isolated, and you know, being obsessed with someone. If those are the type of themes that you like, you will definitely like this book. Those are the type of characters I personally like as well, because I relate to them. And this also has a big focus on libraries and books and literature. So again, I feel like Haruki Murakami is always writing something similar but making it very different. And this goes back to the idea that I was listening to a podcast recently, and the woman on the podcast, I don't remember who she was, or I think she was like a writer or something, and she was saying you will revisit the same thematic, the same setting, the same type of characters over and over again until you're done with it. And I definitely see that in my work in the last 2-3 years. It's always the same kind of character, but they're wildly different genre, from like post-apocalyptic to literary to fantasy to the French Riviera. And it made me feel so much better, because there is that fear, like if you're always talking about the same thing, is it not just boring? Is it not just a cop-out? Is it not just like a self-insert? But if Haruki Murakami can do it and like make a whole freaking career out of it, why not you know? So, and I think like a lot of that is also what makes a writer's trademark. So it made me feel better in some way. It made me less discouraged, because I feel like the first few novels I wrote when I was younger had very distinctive differences, and now I feel like my characters are starting to look similar or kind of converge, and it is a fear of mine, but I know that as soon as I'm like hard on something or I'm very nitpicking on something, I know I can go back and like fix it, and I know that it's something that I will be more aware of going forward, so I know I'll do a better job. But anyways, I'm not going to talk about writing on this channel, because I decided that I'm going to separate writing from reading, but somehow, sometimes there will be some overlap. So if you want to know more of my thoughts on my writing journey right now, you can go on the writing channel. But highly recommend this one. I don't think it's my favorite by him, but I am like intrigued to know what's going to happen next. I'm pretty sure I might finish this tonight as a reward for my writing session. So I only have about 100 or so pages left, or 150 pages left, and yeah, I've been flying through this, you know, considering that it's a big book. I have been getting through this fairly quickly. I think I read 6 hours non-stop yesterday, because I just wanted to understand the world and the character and to see what's gonna happen next. Because the moment you think like, okay, this is the end of the story, like what is he gonna do next, you know, like he subtly adds something to the story. He subtly adds someone's he makes his character reflect, do something different, discover something, and I think that's what makes him a great writer. And I do know that a lot of people are not gonna like this. I just can already feel it, and I can understand it. So as much as I like it, I don't love it, but I really like it, which doesn't make sense. Probably when I finish it and I'll come back tomorrow, I'll reach like a final conclusion. But sometimes, you know, you sit with a book long enough and you start to change your opinions, if that makes sense. And obviously you never know how you really feel until you finish a book, and you never really know sometimes until you reread a book, if that makes sense. But sometimes you know, sometimes you don't know. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I'll update you guys tomorrow. So I finished The City and Its Uncertain Walls about 2 days ago. I really enjoyed it. I would rate it maybe a 4 out of 5 stars or 3.75 out of 5 stars. I think that the confusion that this book brings is intentional. So for that, I will not, knock down the rating. However, was this book unnecessarily long to get to the point? Maybe, yes. It feels like, we're just building, with like lapses of like action and lapses of like realization. And you know what? It is kind of like life, considering how well versed that Murakami is with magical realism and, putting up things that are not real but imagined but real. I don't know, something to ponder and reread at a future time. I feel like when I went back to look at my annotations and my notes, I could see clearly how he was setting it up. But in the moment, I was not blindsided, but mostly like just waiting for something to happen. So I might have like not skimmed past those passages, but might have been like, yeah, we know, like let's get to it. And I think that's really bad to feel that way, but it is what I felt. I will read you a passage from the beginning, and you might want to decide if you want to pick it up or not after that passage. And like I said, not my favorite, not my least favorite. I'm just undecided still, even after finishing. So I guess it was impactful enough for me to keep thinking about it. But without further ado, let me read you the passage that I'm talking about. It's at the very beginning. It's not a spoiler. It says, "Mainly you talked about how the town was laid out. I would ask practical questions and you would answer them. And as we did, the details of the town began to form and were transcribed. You were the one who created the town, or maybe it was there inside you already. But when it came to putting the pieces together so you could visualize it, so you could describe it in words, I do think I played a role as well. You talked about it and I wrote it all down. Like ancient philosophers and religious figures who had a faithful, meticulous scribe or disciples, perhaps as their side taking down their every word. I noted it all down in a special little notebook just for that purpose, the ever-competent secretary or faithful disciple. That summer, the two of us were completely engrossed in this collaborative project of ours." So, yeah, that's The City and Its Uncertain Walls. And I'm just glad that I read it, honestly. And now I'm ready to move on to something a little shorter. I think I've read so many big books this year that I think I just want to slow down a little bit with my reading and just catch up with the reviews as I've been talking about this entire year. But that's because I had such a backlog of things to write about. But yeah, I was going to add a few more books to this vlog, but I think it's gonna get too long, so we'll cut it short and I'll see you on the next reading vlog. Bye!